Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're doing something a little different. We're diving into the very first weekly review from a brand new, very unique news source called Narrative Zero. And for this inaugural review, we're going to be looking back at the major events they covered starting from September 1st. So, what is Narrative Zero exactly? Well, this quote from their own site gives you a pretty good idea. They're not trying to be your typical news outlet. They've built themselves to be a collection of different voices, all with one goal: to cut right through all the noise. Okay, let's really get into it. What is Narrative Zero all about? I think their subtitle here, Unspinning the Spinners, tells you pretty much everything you need to know about their mission. And that mission really breaks down into three key parts. It all starts with unspin the spinners. Actually taking apart media stories to see how they're framed. Then, that leads to their second goal, to unscrew the screwed, which is all about using facts to hold powerful people and institutions accountable. And the ultimate goal of all this? To improve our civic and mental health by digging deeper and talking about what's really broken. So how do they actually deliver the news? Well, this is where it gets really fascinating. They use a cast of different AI personas. You've got Margaret Davenport, she's the classic, composed anchor. There's Henry Caldwell, the witty commentator who brings in historical context. Noel Christopher Walker is the super fact-driven analyst. And then you have Bartholomew Grigsby, the theatrical satirist. And this is absolutely the most important part, every single thing the AI generates is reviewed and overseen by human editors to make sure it's accurate and has integrity. All right, so with that background, let's jump right into the review itself and take a look at the big stories that Narrative Zero has been covering since the start of September. The first story that caught our eye comes from their columnist Henry Caldwell. He decided to reframe Labor Day by focusing our attention on what he calls the original labor force, which, in his view, is mothers. And wow, here's the number that really makes you stop and think. The article cites an analysis using Bureau of Labor Statistics data, and it calculates that if a mother were paid fair market rates for all the jobs she does, her annual salary would top $140,000. And to put a human face on that number, the piece quotes a mother named Linda Martinez. Just listen to how she describes her day-to-day. It's crisis management, nutrition, medical support, sometimes all within the same hour. It really drives home the point that mothers are essentially executives in multiple fields, all at the same time. From there, the review takes a much more somber turn. September 10th was a deeply tragic day, marked by two separate, horrific shootings that happened just hours apart. First, in Utah, the conservative commentator Charlie Kirk was shot while giving a speech. The shot came from a campus building nearby. He was hit in the neck and tragically died from his injuries. A person of interest is in custody, but what's significant is that officials are now calling this a political assassination. And what's just staggering is that at almost the exact same time, another shooting was unfolding, this time inside Evergreen High School in Colorado. 3 students were left in critical condition. That number includes the suspected gunman, who officials believe has a self-inflicted wound. A 4th student was also hurt trying to get away. And this is the slide that puts the tragedy at Evergreen into a really heartbreaking perspective. This was the 3rd school shooting in Colorado this year and one of over 200 that have happened across the country in 2025 alone. It's a stark reminder that this is part of a much, much larger and deeply disturbing pattern. So, we have the facts of what happened, but how does Narrative Zero actually live up to its mission to unspin the spinners? Let's pull back the curtain and look at how they do it. So the first thing they look for is something called narrative shaping. What's that actually mean? Well, think about the 2 shootings we just discussed. Narrative shaping is all about how different media outlets frame that same event, by using certain emotionally charged words or by leaving out key details to steer you toward a specific conclusion about what it all means. And to make this less about a gut feeling and more about data, they use a tool they call the Reality Check Matrix, or RCM. Basically, it's a scorecard for news stories. It looks at 29 different factors, are they using anonymous sources? Are they using loaded adjectives? A low score means the story is probably pretty neutral, but a high score, well, that's a huge red flag that you're likely reading something that's being manipulated, maybe even propaganda. And that right there gets to the very heart of what they're trying to do. They don't just report the news, they analyze the reporting itself. Like the quote says, they're a meta news outlet. And that's really what sets them apart. So after a week filled with such difficult news, and after understanding how these narratives get shaped around it, you're left with a pretty big question. What do we do now? And this is the central question that Narrative Zero really wants its audience to think about. It's a prompt to kind of step back from our immediate gut reactions and think a little more deeply about how we actually engage with these kinds of stories. In the end, Narrative Zero leaves us with a challenge. When we're faced with tragedy, it's not enough to just stay calm. The real task is to become our own spin checkers, to see when our emotions are being played with by a certain narrative, and to consciously choose to reflect instead of just reacting. That, they argue, is really the only path toward healing, instead of just adding more noise to the chaos.
We really hope this deep dive was insightful. We'll be back next Saturday with another explainer, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. Thanks for tuning in.